I see myself now like putting in the work to get to where I want. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if I go on a swing at 500, go on a swing at 1K or 2K or whatever. Like every time I play poker and I end the session for the day, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come back tomorrow. Like
Yeah.
I'll be back. It doesn't just end. Not in the sense of it's all one long session kind of cliche thing, but like I'm
No.
going to play again tomorrow. Like I'm gonna play again tomorrow. Like it's that simple. Like what I want to do, I'm gonna play some more. And it's just a feeling of like it's never over, but I don't want it to be over. Like I don't want it to end.
Welcome to the Lockdown Life podcast. My name is Jamie Flynn. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at jam_fly. All podcasts are available on our YouTube channel. And while you are there, I would appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. The poker dream is dead. Poker is dying. There is no money to be made in poker anymore, and anyone starting out is wasting their time and would have better career prospects working in McDonald's. My guest today says, fuck that. The poker dream is alive and well. With hard work and dedication, one can go from starting out with nothing and rise to the very top of the game. Welcome to the podcast, Landon Tice.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How's lockdown treating you, Landon?
Lockdown's been great. Game's been great. I've got to play more, I guess, more online than I'm effectively used to because I did used to play some live a little bit, but not as much. But it's been great for me, I guess, poker wise. I've been able to kind of sit with myself more, kind of focus on myself at least, more like kind of going outside and exercising and sort of trying to keep myself sane. And the best way for me to do that is to play poker. So it's been great.
Yeah, definitely less distractions during lockdown, I'm sure.
Oh,
So
oh yeah, for sure.
plenty of positives. So Landon, you're 21 years old, from Florida. You primarily specialize in no limit hold'em cash games. I suppose, firstly, can you tell me a bit about your background and how you first came across the game of poker?
Yeah, actually. So when I first started playing poker, I actually learned when I was probably like 6 or 7. I think my dad kind of taught me a little bit. And we used to play like some family games and stuff, and never really thought much of it. Of course, I just thought the game was fun back then, and I've always been kind of into games. And then when I got to like 12 or 13 and went to summer camp, we started playing a little bit of poker for like snacks and like drinks like at like nighttime. Like it'd be like snacks and people would like, I guess it'd be like a tournament and everyone would wager their snacks. Maybe it's a little bit against TOS, but we were gambling back then. Um, I won a couple of those, lost a couple of those. Sent some kids to the snack hospital. They were very upset when they lost their snacks. But learned a lot from then in the sense of just kind of getting used to the game and loving the game.
Was
But
was
then
it all, was it all Texas
I
Hold'em
kind
then?
yeah, it was still Texas
Yeah,
Hold'em.
yeah,
We
yeah.
still played the great 2 card.
Yeah.
So when I got to college, actually at Florida State, I was playing basketball in the gym a lot, and I probably at least over the summer when I first got there, I only took 2 classes because it was like the summer straight from high school. So I went from high school straight to college. And then didn't know what to do, didn't have any friends because I just went up to a new school up in another part of Florida. And then played a lot of basketball because that's what I like to do at home, I guess. And I would just spend all my time after classes just going to the gym playing 8 hours a day. And then a friend of mine from there said, "Hey, do you know how to play poker?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." He's like, "There's a $20 tournament if you want to come over and buy in, and we'll first third gets their money back, second and first normally chop or whatever." He's like, "Do you want to play?" And I was like, "Sure." I haven't played in a while. Let's see what happens. And I ended up winning, which kind of helped. But it was a tournament kind of format. I wasn't entirely sure what was going on. But from then, I kind of remembered how great it felt to kind of be able to succeed in an environment where if you're more intelligent in a sense than the person you're playing against, you're able to reap the rewards. And mostly that reward's going to be either through winning the pot or winning the cash game pot tournament chips, kind of laddering this, that, and the other. And that kind of brought me back into poker. And I was not entirely sure what was going to happen, but I knew I really enjoyed playing the game. And that's really where I kind of went with it. Is like after that tournament, I'd be like, "When's the next time we're playing?" Wouldn't entirely really care about like winning or losing. I just wanted to play some more poker. And since then, I've kind of just put everything into it. Mostly cash games, of course, but I play some tournaments here and there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So
yeah,
you're kind of 18, 19, just starting out in school when
yeah, I started playing more when I was about 19, and then I started playing like full time in the sense of professionally, roughly around the beginning of January 2019. That was a semester I didn't go back.
Okay.
From then, it was full poker,
Hmm.
and I was still playing 20 now at the time. But I was like, all right, I'm gonna put in enough time. I'm gonna make this work. And here we are, about 17 months later, playing 500 Zoom and US sites. So
Yeah.
about to play 1K now, see what happens, take some shots, and it's been great.
Uh, Excellent. Yeah, I suppose firstly, it's very cool from my point of view to hear a story like this, because it's very similar to just the kind of the old school stories of, as you said, you start out at 20 NL, you start
Yeah,
out with a very small amount of money and build your way up. I guess
right.
I guess most people that have that kind of story are now 25, 30, 35 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm interested just to hear kind of, before we get into kind of the recent past. You said kind of,
Mhm.
you learned the game when you're 6, 7 years old. You started playing in summer camp when you were 12. Um,
Right.
how much did you know about poker and kind of the poker world? Because obviously you're now, you're a kid and a teenager when it's, on
Right.
ESPN, when it's blowing up. Was it a big kind of, just talk me through what it was like being a
Sure.
kid as opposed to a teenager or a guy in their 20s growing up during
I
this
th-
poker boom.
I think when I did, the only reason I knew about poker was because my dad kind of taught me about poker, and I never even knew how big of a scene it was back then.
Yeah.
I never even knew about high stakes poker, those legendary episodes of back in the day, and I've never really knew that it was on ESPN, just because most of it was I was very sports based at the time, playing a lot of football, basketball, like most kids in the U.S., finding some sport to play to pass the time after school or being outside a lot with friends after school was over. But I never really knew about what was going on in the poker world. Like I never knew that it was possible back then to effectively play micros. And then there were at least kids in college, like the Scott Sievers and the Ike Caxtons back then, playing micros and then making their way to playing nosebleeds and playing 200, 400. Looking back, maybe I would have liked to get back into playing poker when I was like 13, 14. But as soon as I figured out that, hey, maybe there is something here, then I started to kind of figure out the right way to go about getting to where I wanted to as quickly as I could without trying to do too much. Like the first thing I did when I first wanted to get into poker was find someone that was better than me that could help me in some regard. And
Hmm.
that's what I did. And I found someone from I used to play video games in high school, and I knew someone from that community who then transitioned to poker. And after a couple years of himself playing, he ended up getting to high stakes online. Not entirely sure how. He's one of the only few people that I've talked to that have just done it by themselves. Like he just did
Yeah.
it by himself. Not entirely sure how. And I basically said, hey, is it possible for me to run some hands by you to kind of send you some stuff? And I wasn't really expecting much just because I never really knew him. I just knew of him. And
Yeah.
he was like, yeah, sure, just don't go too crazy about it. And I was like, great. And then a couple weeks later, I probably sent him about 50 messages of certain links of hands I've played, been like, hey, like, am I supposed to fold here, call here, fold pre, like this, that, and the other. And then at that point, he kind of realized how much I wanted to succeed at poker. He was like, all right, like, I guess at this point, if I'm just going to help you, I'd rather just help you get to where you want a little bit faster. And if he effectively staked me for 20 and L. So I
Oh,
was playing 4 and L at the time. Like I started at 4. I was at college, didn't really have much money just because I used to do some sports betting and degen some money off. And I learned my lesson early. I learned the sports betting degen lesson early. It only cost me like 1K to learn like not to be under rolled, where like if I learned that now and had like that degen in me, maybe
yeah.
that 1K turns into 10 or maybe 15. But
Yeah.
luckily
Cheap lesson. Yeah.
we got out cheap. Yeah, we got out cheap. But I guess the thing I took away from that was that I didn't want someone to like to pay for my mistakes, because I had to like ask my family, ask my mom, my brother for like a little bit of money, and like just having that on the back of my mind hurt a lot of like, wow, like I'm making someone pay for my mistakes. I don't want to do that again. So when he started staking me for 20, it was a pretty rough process. I think I played about 8 months at about 20 now, and basically was winning at like 3 to 4 bigs per 100 adjusted. But at micros, the rake is 12, 13 bigs per 100. So I mean, I was doing really well, but I didn't really know enough to effectively move to 50 until about February, March, April of 2019. So the first couple months of my professional sort of career. And I got lucky that my mom told me, look, you did well in high school. And I did the IB diploma, the baccalaureate diploma. And she was like, just take 6 months off, as much as I don't want you to. Take a break and just focus on what you have to do. And then we'll kind of reconvene and see what happens. And I guess she thought I was going to go back to college in the fall. And
Yeah.
then I ended up doing well at poker and kind of seeing like, okay, I know there's something here. I just have to put the pieces together. And even before I kind of started becoming more successful, I was like, look, this is going to work. I'm going to make it work. Just give me some time and just trust me on this. And she was like, okay. And after the first 6 months, I effectively got off stake with him. First 6 months of January. So I was on stake with him for like 9 months, but we still talk every day. He's
Yeah.
still one of my best friends to this date. And I basically tried to go on my own roll and play like 20-0 again on my own roll, and then play some live 1-2 that at the casino to kind of either like spend some time live and do social stuff. And the
Yeah.
games are soft as it is, that I could still make some money being 20 at the time and basically having to pay like $500 a month for rent. So I
Yeah.
didn't really have much overhead. So I was really lucky in that regard. Like I didn't have bills like car insurance, other things like that. So all I had to do is effectively pay rent after the first 6 months. And I basically learned how to beat 20-0 for a decent clip, even though rake was high.
Hmm.
And since then, in August, so that whole summer, I went back up to Tallahassee to Florida State and roomed with a friend of mine that I knew from playing poker, actually. He was a dealer at a card room up there. And I would go every couple of days to go play live poker up there for a couple weeks, and then came back home and did well up there. And my mom was like, look, if you can make X amount of dollars over the summer, you don't have to go back. And I was pretty close to that number, to where I was like, just give me the fall and let's see what happens in the fall.
Yeah.
So in the fall, I joined a stable from someone that also played high stakes no limit on global poker. And it was super, super like low key. Like it wasn't really a big thing, like not a contract thing, more of just like, here's money, I'll coach you, I'll teach you some stuff. Just effectively like, don't be weird about it. And like, cause being like an integrity kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is great. And started at 50-0 there in a couple weeks, like literally 2 weeks, moved up to 100. And then in 2 weeks, moved up to 200. And I was like, I guess some things are clicking once I
Yeah.
kind of solidified some pre-flop stuff and learned some kind of concepts of like 1/3 and overbet spots and things of that nature. And then got to 200, and then 200 I basically broke even in dollars, but was winning at like 3 bigs per 100 in EV. So I was on like a 30 buy-in effective downswing while breaking even for like a couple months. And
Yeah.
I'm lucky I had the graph because I knew I was doing something right. The result
Yeah.
of like the money wasn't there, but I was like, cool, I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
So did that for a little bit, started succeeding, and then one of the biggest moments, like transformative moments of my career, was in November of that year in 2019. I went on a stable trip to the Hollywood Hardrock, so 45 minutes away. So
Yeah.
other people from the stable were going to be there. Stable coach was going to be there with some of his friends, and he was about my age. He's literally my age. He's a couple months older than me, but he's just a beast and has been playing for a long time. And basically, we got an Airbnb at the Hard Rock, played some live poker, and I basically just talked with all these guys that are playing 10, 20, 25, 50, even bigger, like 100, 200 private games, like, and just had these invites and basically just got to talk to them and stay with them for a couple of weeks. And it was a lot of just understanding the mentality of the only way you can actually make money by playing poker is by sitting in the seat and just playing poker. Like you can only win when you're able to play, in the sense of if I'm sitting in my room and doing other things, I'm effectively losing money by not playing poker. But it's a kind of about finding that balance because I can't burn
Yeah.
myself out. And it was just like, it was like, okay, yeah, like I know I'm winning. I just have to play a lot. And that's where I kind of started putting in even more volume than I was before, but I was kind of a little bit more selective about it. I used to play like 6 to 12 tables when I first started and then realized how much of a problem that was. Just because if you don't understand the spots, you're kind of just making small mistakes everywhere
Yeah.
versus kind of technically patching up some things and then focusing on volume once you kind of get to that point.
Yeah.
Because I was playing 20 and L, and I was for sure like making mistakes all over the game tree, but was thinking to myself, oh, like these games are too soft, like I can just do what I want.
Mm.
And then looking back, I probably would have played less hands just in order to effectively learn more. Like
Yeah. A lot of bad habits maybe can
yeah,
creep in if you're in kind of soft competition at that stage. And
yeah, exactly. And I kind of would never really think about what I was doing. And I think that's still a thing that when people ask me for coaching, I do some coaching work, is that I've learned from my first coach was just why you're doing things. It's like why do you like okay, I bet here. What why? Like
yeah.
what are you trying to accomplish? Like what's the goal here? Versus just, oh, like I have top pair, I bet. Like that's a good hand. It's more of like what are you targeting? What do you think can happen versus a certain person, this, that, and the other. It's a little bit different on like an anonymous site like a Bovada or Ignition, just because
Mm.
there's no screen names. But like the premise is still the same of like if you're playing in a spot, you're still trying to target a range. And it's like,
Yeah.
what does your hand want to accomplish versus their range? And what does your range even look like to begin with? And
Yeah.
then kind of breaking it down and thinking about it, which is something I didn't really do for the first 8, 9 months of playing poker. It was more just thinking I knew I was better than the people I was playing against and just doing what I wanted,
Mm.
regardless of how technical, not technical. And it was just, it was a lot of wasted effort,
Yeah.
but it was a lot of wasted effort.
Yeah. In those first 8 or 9 months,
Yeah.
what was your how did you what was your initial kind of learning path for the game? Was it, was it talking through hands with this friend of yours? What was your initial kind of approach to the game? Was it, how
Right.
did you was it forums? Was it talking to people? Was it reading books? What was your kind of early poker strategy, I guess, just very early on?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was he and I both are very big volume guys, and he played a lot. And the way he learned was by playing and sort of, I guess, getting hit in the head enough times to kind of realize when something worked or didn't.
Yeah.
And it works for some people, other people not so much because the patterns don't really appear. Of like, certain boards look the same but are different depending on spots. Of like, a single raise pot button versus big blind is different than a three bet pot button versus big blind, and things of that nature. To where I just played a lot, and I tried to find people to talk to. Mostly it was through him,
Yeah.
and then at some point I ended up creating a Discord group of some regs at 20 and L that I knew just from chatting with or seeing at the tables enough. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to create a Discord group if you guys want in, and we can kind of talk some strategy. That'd be great. And I had that for a couple months, and I was still kind of at 20, starting to move to 50. And then my friend was like, look, you're not going to improve by talking with people who are as good as you or give you confidence that isn't necessary.
Mm.
In the sense of being able to improve, I'm going to improve more by talking to better people and talking to people that understand more complicated things to where they're not just agreeing with what I say because I'm either A, better than they are in that extent and just saying, oh, like that makes sense. Nice, like good job. Like if a value bet works or if it doesn't, or if a bluff works or it doesn't. To where talking with someone that I guess you respect that lets you sort of understand how things work regardless of how you feel about it. Because like
Mm.
one of the conflicts I had with my friend, at least at the start, was I always used to think I knew more than I did. And he'd always try to offer support and offer advice. And I'd be like, I see what you're saying, but I don't think it works. And it was kind of like, I look back at it now, especially when like I do my own coaching work, and sometimes like when you say something and it makes sense but doesn't get taken the right way, it starts to
Yeah.
seem like you're not being respected enough, of like, oh, like I'm spending this time helping you, and you like, like I wasn't paying him because I was either like on stake with him when he didn't even have to stake me. It was kind of like him being kind and me being like, yeah, I see what you're saying, but I don't want to talk about it. Like I see what you're saying, but I'm right,
Yeah,
type of idea.
yeah. When you say I see what you're saying, but I don't think it works. Are you
Right.
saying that is it out of is it partly out of ego? Is it more you can
Yeah.
see why it doesn't work, but you just can't maybe put into words why it doesn't work, or is it kind of some
I
combination
think
of both?
I think at the start, and even still now I'm a lot better at it. Where if I make a mistake and I can see it's a mistake, it's like, okay, cool. I see it more as a learning experience. Where before, I saw mistakes as something I couldn't handle. Where if something worked that I did that was objectively wrong, not in the sense of results, but I was like, look, I've played against the player pool. I know what this reg or fish is doing because I play with him a lot.
Yeah.
When things work just because they do, and like sometimes you can make a horrible play but run into the one part of their range that calls.
Mm.
And you think you're a genius and you think you're the best, and then I send it to my friend when I used to, and he used to be like, yeah, this is just bad. You got pretty lucky. And then I'd be like, oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about? Like, I knew I was going to get called by this hand. He's like, look, that's not the way this game works. And it kind of probably aided him a lot because I'm a very competitive person and I don't like to be wrong. Or at
Mm.
least I still don't. But now I'm more accepting of if I'm wrong, it's okay because I'm not going to know everything. But when I first started playing poker, I thought I was going to be able to have and unlock all the answers by myself. Like, even if someone helped me, I could find it out eventually.
Yeah.
And it's just not the right way to go about improving quickly. Like, I might get there, I might get to high stakes at some point, but I could either take 5 years or two and
Yeah.
a half, just depending on who I'm talking to, really absorbing information and just sort of understanding you're not going to be right all the time, and that's okay as long as you take what you need from the situation. And I've
Mm.
been a lot better at doing that now than
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. I think poker is definitely, it's just such a competitive environment now that it's very very tough go at it yourself, and as you said, it is possible, but I think you can just accelerate the time, so much by doing it as, part of a team, or kind of, five brains are a lot better than one. So if you're kind of bouncing off
Right.
each other and working together, it can really lessen that kind of learning curve. What I
Yeah.
suppose, when you mentioned a few things there. You said you're quite competitive. When you kind of first came across the game of poker, was it a competitive endeavor? Was it a gambling endeavor? Did you see it mathematical, psychological? Was there any kind of
hmm
particular element that attracted you to the game?
I think a couple parts where definitely the mental and intelligence side of the game spoke to me more than the end result of what could be in poker. Of I didn't really see playing poker as a means of making a lot of money, but in the sense of if I was good at the game, I would have money by default because I'd be playing higher stakes,
Yeah.
and then that skill set's going to prove itself. So it was a lot of the mental sort of warfare that goes on because I really enjoy, I guess, even when I was a kid, I used to play chess, and I used to be involved in games all the time. And I was playing video games, and in video games, I would play with some friends against other friends of mine for money, and it'd be like Call of Duty. So like it'd be like a search and destroy kind of format. So it's kind of that same kind of intelligent kind of thing to an
Mm.
extent with some other gameplay sort of theatrics. But it was more of the if I think he's doing this, how do I react? And that's part of what I've grown up with my entire life. So it kind of just felt natural to me to kind of
Game
see how
theory in a
poker for what it
nutshell.
was.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
there's a bunch of different, so I never saw it from like a theoretical, but I just thought of if I can think better than someone, I can succeed at this. And I think that I think pretty well. And that's part of the ego in the sense of there's more to the game than thinking well, because you still need fundamental sort of, you still need a baseline of like what it is you're doing. And that's why you have a baseline, is to in order to deviate when you think it's not, when it's either more profitable to do so. But without having that, and just kind of like thinking about spots and being like, oh, like I think this guy has this because I want to win the spot, is a different sort of mentality than, I think he has this constructed range. If I bet X amount, he's going to have to fold X percent of his range, which then breaks it down into what he has on turns and rivers. But
Mm.
it's more than just, I think he is bullshit, I'm going to raise, or I'm going to bet, and I'm just going to 3x jam or do whatever it is I want to do just because I think it's going to work.
Yeah.
And it's a slippery slope, because there's some times where it does work and you think you're a genius, and then there's some times where it doesn't and you feel like, oh, like I could have easily just checked and gave up, or I could have just not bet as much, or I could have found a different spot, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of understanding now that it's not about the spot, or it's not about winning the hand. It's about focusing more on what I'm doing versus my opponent. Of
Mm.
like, if I'm playing my spots the way I want to play my spots, and they make sense to me, and if I run them through some solves or run them through some friends, and they're like, yeah, this makes sense. When this guy bets X sizing, he doesn't particularly have X hands in range. Then it's more of an understanding of, my friend and I don't see the spots the same, but we understand where each other's coming from.
Yeah.
Where before, he used to be like, dude, I have no idea why you're doing this. But now it's like, I see what you're doing, I just don't do it. But there's that like respect sort of part of, this does make sense.
Yeah.
But if I don't like something he does, if he doesn't like something I do, he'll be the first to say, yeah, this is awful, I would never do this. And then we'll talk through it. But it's more than just the sort of like coaching, like student mentality of, do what you, of I'm going to do this. This is bad. I know why this is bad. Don't do this anymore. It's more
Mm.
of, I know you understand why you're doing what you're doing more than I was before.
Yeah.
Because before I was looking for answers. Now I'm sort of asking different questions.
Mm.
Where it's like, what if I overbet here versus bet small? Or what if I check raised with a certain hand versus overbetting myself? And sort of working through those questions versus, is what I'm doing good? Like, I'm
Yeah.
past that point to an extent.
Yeah. I think yeah, it's a very important part of poker where you there's so many kind of different angles you can take on things. Even something like deciding if you're going to have multiple sizings on a certain street. Um,
Right.
that's question one. So it's kind of like, if you
Yeah.
decide you're going with a certain sizing, your friend might not even, he might just play his range as, one sizing in the street. So even straight away, you're kind of entering this, I see what you're doing. I disagree with it for a different reason to why you might be doing it, but I can see what you're thinking. And then
Yeah.
you get
Right.
you get into a discussion then of, you know, the merits of kind of both sides, and I think it can only improve you then as a player.
Yeah, because like, even when you look at like, when I start looking at solves, which I'm doing more now, just because I used to be super astringent from not wanting to look at solvers, just because I thought they were effectively stupid. But now, like, looking and running through solves, I'm like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Just
Yeah,
because you can kind of understand, like, if someone's playing a range, how you're supposed to react and how much your decision actually loses. Not that they're playing the same way, but sort of just gaining that baseline of, oh, like, this, there's a reason why the solver plays like this. Figure that out first,
yeah,
and then sort of make your sort of crazy, look them in the eye, like, they don't have this sort of play, right?
mm,
Where it's like, in my second stable, my first stable I was in with a friend of my friend, I basically, he used to say that I had a brain solver. He's like, your brain solver, you do what you want. Because like, I wouldn't look at Sims. He'd give me all the answers that a solver would do. He'd be like, I would bet this, or I would never raise here, I would never bluff jam here. And he'd be like, I don't know why you do all these things with your brain solver. Just look at a solve and see what it's like. And I used to think that using Pio was too difficult, or not talking about it was a waste of time because people don't play in a theoretical sense.
mm,
But just understanding the sim and then creating my own strategy and what makes sense, and like understanding what someone's range actually looks like when they check, versus just kind of thinking about it of like, oh, he checked back on ace xx, he probably doesn't have one, versus thinking, okay, he probably mixes some things. Because looking at solvers, they mix their decisions a lot, because you
yeah,
want to sort of have that sort of balanced approach of being able to have strong hands in every line of the game tree, or at least hands that can defend. And now, like looking at the solve, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. I don't know why I thought this was so difficult. And
Mm,
sort of looking at the solve has kind of helped me understand that there's reasons and merits for doing certain plays based on the board, based on the texture, and that changes dramatically if the board is different. Where it's like on ace king X versus ace 6-4, where it's like people in position like button versus big blind can have an overbet strategy on flops just because we always have ace king and
yeah.
our opponent doesn't. But on a board like ace 6-4, it's a lot less of a thing because they still have cards that can connect. But on
Mm,
ace king, they're mostly just smashed because they just don't have that ace king, aces, and kings in their range.
mm,
And just kind of thinking about that and being like, oh wow, like this card changes so much. It's worth sort of identifying and understanding the flaws in my own strategy and sort of thinking about, oh, when I check here, I can never have a good hand because I'm not protected. And
mm,
looking at the solve, you can kind of see how to protect yourself in that sense.
mm. Yeah, so you do quite a bit of work with PO at the moment.
Yeah, right,
So yeah, it sounds like you're taking an approach where you do think doing work with the solver is quite important, but you're not implementing it in a way that I think some people might look at, these kind of online cash game players. There's certainly
right.
a reputation that guys are just trying to see what the solver is doing, trying to memorize it, and trying to implement it.
Hmm.
Would you say your strategy
Right.
completely different to that?
So in the sense of using Sims, at least for now, I'm first starting to understand why they do what they do, and I'm pretty good at that just based off the amount of time and experience I put into it. But I'm also trying to create how to simplify strategies that work for me.
Yeah.
Because there's some parts of a solve where things make sense to me, but not as well to other people. And that's kind of what the best players are doing, is trying to find the lines that make sense to them that yield almost zero EV from deviating from quote unquote standard lines.
Mm,
Because putting my opponents in difficult spots is going to make them play worse, especially if they haven't studied it. Because if people are using solves and trying to memorize the standard lines, as soon as someone takes a different bet sizing or takes a different approach,
yeah.
they're going to be in a spot of trying to play the guessing game. And when you play the guessing game, you start making more mistakes.
Mm. I think that's a very good point. I think we're at kind of a funny point in
Yeah.
the poker like theory world right now, because we have this thing that technically gives us all the answers, but in practice it's a totally different scenario. uh,
Right.
so I think kind of bringing leading people down the garden path and bringing them into kind of areas of the game tree where they're not so familiar
Yeah.
has an awful lot going for it.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I found myself, especially playing live, you're playing this guy and you can see he clearly isn't a good player. Let's just leave it at that. He's not a good player.
Right.
And he's making these, he's betting pot when, you have the range advantage and he's none of the nut combos. And
Right.
you get kind of paralyzed and you're like, I know what he's doing is bad, but then, taking yourself out of this kind of solver area of trying to figure out, okay, how do I actually exploit this? And then sometimes, like 10 minutes after the hand, you're like, okay, that's obviously the strategy or the exploit I should
Right.
make against that. But it just
Yeah.
shows how easy it is that even bad players, when they take you out of your comfort zone, they can really, really kind of mess up your thinking. And
Yeah, they can do some damage
then how
for
many
sure.
big blinds are you losing in those scenarios?
Right. Because like there's some spots where like especially with donk leading, like that's more of a
Yeah.
new thing that people are sort of looking at least on a holistic approach and like single raise pots, button versus big blind when the board's like 5, 6, 7 with two suits. Like people are starting to think, oh yeah, like big blind does have range advantage here. If we plug it into the solve, we can see what we can donk lead. Because people aren't used to donk leads. People used to, I guess, donk lead with weaker ranges just because they try to protect their weakish hand of like if they had like a weak top pair, they'd bet to kind of protect and make people fold their ace highs.
Mm,
But now people are a lot more calibrated in taking their stronger hands and doing the same thing, taking some bluffs and doing the same thing, which then leads the in position player to sort of think about, oh, how am I supposed to combat this and yield zero EV from the strategy I'm doing, in the sense of them being able to exploit me.
Mm.
Because like if they're only doing a certain thing, at least in live it's different, just because most people's ranges either A, haven't done solver work, or B, is very unprotected,
Yeah.
especially when taking like smaller bet sizes. Like I literally had a joke with a friend of mine in November and on that trip where we were like, maybe like versus people live when they bet like 1/3 or anything less pot, you just 6x jam. Like you just 6x jam. Because like they just never have the block bet traps. It's always just the weak two pairs or the weak hands that they want to bet but are scared to check and then call. But so they'll bet, and then if you raise, they just fold. But it's like maybe that's just the play. Maybe you just 6x rip over whatever they bet if it's not a big pot size bet, and if they have it, they're one of the few people that either made a speculative call or took a hand that they probably shouldn't be calling but still call just based on the spot.
Yeah. But
And
like again, you're going back to kind of some of the old fashioned kind of logic used in poker of,
yeah,
I'm going to make this assumption and make this exploit. And yeah, maybe
yeah,
if it doesn't work out like 1 in 12 times, yeah, I lose money at 1 in 12 time. But if it works the other 11,
sure,
it's a profitable move. So
yeah, exactly,
there's no certain way. I think that's why people kind of dislike that way of thinking, because I can't tell you for sure whether it's yes or no. If you put a hand into
right,
it, it can tell you yes, this
yeah,
is plus EV or not.
for sure,
But that's certainly a big part of poker still.
right, because it's like you can sort of see a spot and think, yeah, this makes sense, but you don't know how good it is unless you sort of have that sample or that read on someone. Like especially when I play live poker, I play very, very aggressive, just because I guess there's more of a psychological aspect versus playing online. Just
Mm,
because you have to physically put chips into the middle and have people look at you a certain way of like, if you like, that's why people don't like getting stacked when they play live, is because people look at you like if you make a hero call and you're wrong, people look at you like, what did you call with? Or if you make a bluff and get called and you like get snap call and you look like an idiot, everyone looks at you a certain way. And to me it's like that's kind of where I thrive, is like knowing that if people don't want to look a certain way, I can make them make folds that they shouldn't make, where I can make them make calls that they probably shouldn't make,
yeah,
because they have a certain percentage of their range that quote unquote can't fold. Where people where they can make a fold, flip their cards over, and be like I can't fold that, right? And then everyone else at the table is like no, and then you get the sympathy, and then like they feel good about it, but you drag in the pot knowing that they only have a certain amount of hands,
mm,
and it works a lot better, especially live versus online, because you can kind of see how money affects certain people. Because
yeah,
like I know that when I play live, I sort of see the pot as a percentage of what it is, and then my bet sizings in relation to that. I'm like, oh, like you three bet pre to like 110, 120, because there's a straddle in the 2-5 game with 2-5-10. Someone makes it 40, you make it 110, 120. There's like 250 in the pot, and then boards like king 6-4. I'm like, oh, like what's a third of this pot? 80. Like I don't think, oh, this is a nice meal if I wanted to go eat a nice meal at the casino. It's more of just, oh, like there's 240 in the pot. I need to bet 1/3 here. This is the number. It's more of just a number versus
yeah,
what it is. And then if you have to jam in a spot where there's like 400 or 500 in the pot and you're jamming for a stack to pot one or a little bit over, it's more of, okay, like that exercising to get the most folds. This is what I'm going to do. And it's not like, oh, $500 a new pair of shoes or rent that to pay to my mom. It's more like, this is the sizing that makes the most sense, and it's going to make them more uncomfortable. And it's just kind of understanding that part, at least in the live environment. Because online it's a little bit different, and you have to be a little bit more technical. It's
mm,
well, a lot more technical. Just because there's people playing very, very well, and they understand when they check, they're capping their range most of the time, so they have to defend their checking range.
yeah.
People live don't really do that very much, at least not in some spots. It's very technical. It's very particular.
Yeah, I think
Like
when you're getting so few hands, you're not.
yeah,
This is my hand this time. I'm not.
yeah, exactly. Like this is my pot.
Just yeah, yeah,
Right. This is my pot. Like I can't let them draw out on me. I can't let them do this. So like in live poker, when someone checks to me, they better be prepared to call two pretty big bets on the turn in the river.
yeah,
And unless they're trapping, then they're probably gonna have to fold at some point. And it's
yeah,
just about, I'm more than happy with looking a certain way, because I mean it helps in the future anyways. At least
Yeah.
for me, yeah, like me being 21 and young, I don't get much credit as it is. Like I always look at, but it's funny because at higher stakes games, when I'm playing like the 5-10 private games at the casino or the 10-10 games, it's more like, oh, like this kid's 21 and he's in the game. He's probably good at the game.
Yeah.
Like, he's not like degen shot taking if he's like playing like this and plays a certain way. At least in most regards, at least at a higher stakes game. But at 1-2 or 2-5, it's like, oh, like this kid's probably got X amount of money in his wallet, and here he is trying to run it up, type of thing. Like he's trying to steal a bunch of pots, trying to do all these sort of things.
Mm.
Where if I was a couple years older or like looked a certain way, at least psychologically it's different. Where like if you're 40 and have a suit on, you
Yeah.
look like you're gonna get a lot more respect than someone that walks in with a sweater and a hoodie.
Yeah. There's a buddy of mine. He's Irish, from Ireland, grew up in Ireland, but his dad is Chinese, so he looks
Mm.
Asian. So we always
Right.
say to him that God, it must be so easy. They're going to call you all day every.
Yeah, all the gambly, they love flush draws.
Yeah, so
They
they
get all the
just think
money in with the yeah.
everyone sees him and they're like, this guy's bluffing, he's crazy, call. Whereas if you're, a young white guy or, an old middle-aged
Yeah.
guy, if you're overweight, if you're, whatever, it's
Yeah.
people are going to make all these assumptions. So it's
Right. There's a lot of the assumptions that kind of go on.
another thing you just have to factor in.
Yeah, and it's just like that's sort of what allows someone in the live arena to do well. Is like
Yeah,
realizing what people think of them and then sort of manipulating a strategy around it. Where
yeah,
like I have a friend of mine that plays a lot of live, and he knows that when he wears a certain suit or like looks like with jeans and a shirt, he gets a different sort of respect when he's wearing the suit. So he'll start bluffing more when he's wearing the suit. He'll start doing different things where people are just going to respect that more because of, I guess, societal pressure of like, oh, like when this guy looks a certain way, like you treat them with more respect, or if they're older, you treat them with more respect. And there's a lot of, I guess, a lot of it as well, especially being a young guy. Like people don't like losing to younger people, at least like the older demographic of poker players. Like I
yeah,
played a lot of hands versus people where like they call and it's like, well, like I don't want to lose a pot to this young kid that he's only played for like a year, right?
yeah.
When you really think about it and the amount of hands I've played probably more than 20, 25 years of someone only grinding live.
Mm.
So like time doesn't work the same in poker.
No, and good luck explaining that to him.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, like I played for 20 years. I
Yeah,
know all the spots. I know you always have it. It's like, well, okay, then like
yeah,
the game just moved on. Like the game's moved on from what it was.
yeah,
Like when I see someone my age at a table, I'm more wary than not. At least if I don't know who they are,
mm.
because most of the people that are my age are very calculated, or either playing online or understand principles and theoretical things. For most people back in the older than me, like 40s, 30s plus, sort of saw the game when it was coming up with the Daniel Negreanu and the live and the poker tournaments and the high stakes cash games of like with Dwan, where Dwan
Yeah,
was kind of shooting from the hip. But now it's a lot more strategic and statistical versus
yeah,
assumptive.
yeah.
Like it's
And
definitely that.
ironically, you can make a lot of assumptions. That, when you know someone is thinking in that way, you can then make assumptions about their play.
Right. And it's just like kind of figuring about out like who cares more about the money in front of them, because that's the people you can kind of punish. Just because if it matters to them more, they're going to be a lot less sticky on the river than some other people. Because
Yeah,
like they see an all in bet and they're like, oh, like I only brought one buy in with me, or I only brought this, that, and the other with me. And then that's kind of how I do well in live poker as well. Is
yeah,
where it's like, oh, like I know this guy's he literally said he's only playing for this much and then he's done. Like they're very, very wary to lose that in the first couple hours because they think that's going to last them through their entire night. If not, they run it up and stack and have more. So especially when they start winning a little bit, they start locking up, and then you start sort of seeing who's playing differently based on what's happened, and it's
yeah,
pretty apparent.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's so much information. Poker. It's all about kind of information and how you analyze that information and how you adapt to it. And
Yeah.
live, there's just there's so much more information available to make to base your decisions on.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you have so much more. You have so much more. Like you can look at the way someone like shuffles chips and basically tell how competent they are at poker. Like
I'm always self-conscious when I sit down at a new casino or a new poker table, and I'm holding the I have poker chips.
yeah,
I have them
you
constantly, but
you
I
always
always
have them
try
on
to
you.
avoid riffling the chips my first
Yeah,
few minutes at the table, because
right,
they'd give away straight away. People know, okay, this player is experienced, or it's not his first time in the card room.
right. It's at least not their first time, basically. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Sorry, go
it's
on.
just yeah, it's just like kind of looking at stuff in that nature and just thinking like, wow, there's people that can give away a bunch of things just based on the way they shuffle their chips and then like check and then like force chips in the middle when they bet and like all these sort of things where online you just kind of see chips go in the middle and you see the time bank rough like
Yeah,
slowly go down where some people kind of mess with the timing for good reason
yeah,
and there's not really anything proven about timing tells yet but sometimes you kind of feel when people take longer in some spots they're bluffing or they snap through something they have it or all these sort of things that kind of go into
yeah,
extra decision points that you can have online but in live you can kind of see it on people's faces
yeah,
of like what like my favorite thing is when people grab chips and then check where it's like please don't bet please don't bet because I'm trying to scare you just and I like oh like you do that and check and I don't know who you are because I know regs do that all the time.
yeah,
Regs do that all the time and kind of mess with each other and do that with I guess a balance so to speak. But there's people that don't and they're trying to say okay I have weak showdown please don't bet I'm trying to scare you
yeah.
like type of idea.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
there's
great.
certainly a lot of and look, it's live tells.
Oh
What else
yeah.
do we call it?
What else? Yeah, it's the
It's most
live reads.
definitely a thing. People who kind of disrespect that element of the game, I think they're just losing out. Simple as that. You can just make such big exploits live that if you're not using all this information, you're definitely losing out. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So just want to go back, just speaking about online for a moment. So you're playing 500 Zoom and kind of jumping up to 1K Zoom a bit on Ignition.
Right.
So that's a US only site.
Yeah, it's mostly US. Yeah, like
Yeah.
basically US
And
offshore kind of thing.
yeah. Anonymous usernames.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then yeah. So just kind of some basic questions for those that mightn't be kind of aware of it. Yeah. Is there so you can't? There's no point using a HUD, but you can use
Well,
Poker Tracker and
there's PT4 and you can have a HUD, but
okay.
you can just kind of base what people are doing based off like the HUD stats or like if people are playing a lot of hands, you can kind of tell they're probably more active than others. But
It
sometimes
does.
the HUD works well, sometimes
Yeah,
it doesn't. Yeah, like just like pre-flop, like VPIP, PFR kind of things. But
yeah,
it's like if you see somebody play a lot up from the HUD, you can kind of make an assumption if you want. And sometimes there's people that try to understand that and then play a certain way, but
mm,
that's mostly at higher stakes than regular like 200 500 type of things where like people sort of play like fishy on purpose at least at the start when they join a new table to sort of look a certain way,
mm,
but that's super assumptive based as well.
yeah,
So
yeah. The five. I know the 500 Zoom games on and Poker Stars kind of have the reputation of being the first, level of kind of really tough games on the internet. Is it similar on Ignition? Is there bigger games regularly, or is 500 Zoom still a kind of very
so 500 zoom runs roughly at nights and not much during the days,
okay,
but 2 KNL is the highest thing that runs on there. That's the highest thing that runs.
okay,
So if I were to play higher when I do get to that point, I probably have to either A, like move to stars or play on ACR where they have 2550 and some maybe 50 100, but I'm not entirely sure. I think
mm,
mostly 2550 is the only thing that runs. But that's basically it for like the American landscape is like you get to 2550 on ACR and then sort of figure out what to do from there because at that point you have the skill set to be able to be
yeah.
successful. And
Um, yeah. What's your approach to kind of sessions and routine with poker? Is it just play as much as you can, or do you have kind of a steady routine?
so right now, based on just the climate of the pool and just like a lot of people staying home and because of this whole virus thing, is games have been great. I've been sort of putting front loading a lot of volume as well as doing some study when I guess I'm tired or don't necessarily want to play that much. But it's mostly like wake up, kind of shower, kind of get ready for the day, and then sort of just put in volume until I don't want to play anymore. And then at that point, I'll either run some Sims, do some Twitch streams of some Sims or some cash games that I do want to play, and then sort of talk with some friends about some certain spots. And I don't really have like a regimented schedule. It's more of like when I wake up, kind of put in the volume, and I kind of just hold myself accountable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's been great.
Does 500, does that run 24/7? Or sorry, 500 just runs
It
at night and
500 runs mostly at night, and then everything else sort of runs throughout the day.
so you,
Games are just obviously better at night.
yeah, of course. Yeah. Um, yeah. How many hands would you kind of be getting in every month? Do you set yourself targets, or is it just get in as much
Um,
as you can?
so I don't really set myself targets, but these last couple months, I've been playing about 200 hours a month the past couple months, and been playing roughly about 70K hands. So I mean, it's a lot. Like I've been playing a lot, but I mean, I'm mostly just sort of trying to take advantage of the climate and the situation of what is now,
Hmm.
because who knows when that's going to change. That this is probably the best time to try to shot take and move up and be successful in poker, just because there's more dead money in the sense right now versus maybe in a year from now or in a
Yeah.
couple months from now. Because
Yeah.
like games are good now, I kind of just have to put in the volume because like I don't know when I'm going to get a chance like this again.
Yeah. Totally
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yep.
I assume so the COVID situation, obviously it's affecting, you can't play live. I assume you're kind of happy that it's
Yeah.
the change in the online landscape more than makes up for the lack of live play, I'm
Oh
guessing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because playing online is great for me. Playing live is also fun when I want to get out of the house. Like
Yeah.
it just gives me a reason to talk to people. Like it literally gives me a reason to get out of the house, and it's great because I don't. I guess right now like I'm super in love with poker, so I need to find a reason to get out of the house, and it's like, oh, more poker, but you get to talk to people more. Seems fine, and it's great. Like playing nine max is slow, but I kind of keep it entertaining and talk to the other people at the table, kind of keep it really fun because I know like playing live, I'm going to be successful in that environment. I don't really have to seek and try to gain all these small little edges of like not talking to people
Mm,
and putting headphones in and sort of being not an enjoyable person to be around, at least in a live environment.
mm,
Because the idea is to kind of keep the people that are playing for fun having fun.
yeah.
Not in the sense of like not being a genuine person, but like I can do as much as I can to kind of make the game enjoyable. Just because as much as I don't really effectively care who I'm playing against. I'd rather people have fun.
Yeah.
So I'm good at I guess talking and being personable and kind of poker is just what I know best. So I'm okay with talking with anyone about it, and it's been great. Just being
Yeah.
able to kind of make friends. Like I made a lot of friends, a lot of good friends at live poker. I have a few really good friends that I've made just from talking, just from sort of looking out and being like, hey, like I think that you made a good play here, or like talking about it away from the table, of course. Just 'cause it's not really necessary to talk strategy much. But like I'll talk to them at some point and be like, hey, like that was pretty good, or do you want to, I guess, either look at some hands or do some certain things in poker that could benefit both of us? And most
Yeah.
of the time it's like, sure, because like most of the regs are very friendly, at least in live poker rooms around me. Like most of the regs know each other, like they're there all the time.
Yeah.
Like you don't, even if you're gonna play with them, like doesn't mean you have to hate the guy, doesn't mean you have to think,
No,
oh, like I never,
I think there's a professional courtesy there. Even though you're battling, at the end of the
yeah,
day, there's so much you share in common, and it can be Joe, it can be poker, it can be a very lonely place, it can be a very individual game. So when trying to get non-poker people to relate to the poker struggles can be very difficult. So having that professional courtesy with other professional players or other regular players totally makes sense. And as you said, most of the time people are pretty decent people and nice people.
yeah, yeah,
It
for
doesn't mean
sure.
battle at the table.
Right. Most of the time, people are very good, are good people. Like at least from what I've seen live, like most of the time, the people they're good people, and I just like talking to good people.
Yeah.
It's been great. It's been really great. Like just finding myself and seeing who I am as a person and how I kind of react and respond to others just in a poker landscape. And it's kind of giving me a lot more acceptance of I enjoy poker. I can talk to anyone about this.
Yeah.
I just kind of have to be myself. And that's why I've started doing streaming, and streaming has been great, is because I'm not really trying to be someone else. It's just I love poker a lot. And people have told me a lot, like, oh, you love this game a lot. It's infectious. Or like after a coaching call I do with someone, they're like, oh, like I'm about to go play some more poker right now. And I'm like, great. Like
Yeah.
I'm happy to kind of like ignite that fire.
Yeah.
And it's it brings me a lot of like joy to kind of talk about poker, talk about stuff in poker. Doesn't matter who it's with.
Mm.
It's just a lot of fun to me. I just love the game right now.
What do you what are your thoughts on balance? I think there's a couple of things. I think firstly, to on the journey you're on, if you want to get to the highest level, I think there's no two ways about it. You have to be all in. You have to be obsessed with
Yeah,
it. You really
right.
commit a lot of time and effort to it. But what do you do to relax? What do you do to chill out? And do you think about
Right.
kind of balance in life a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with the people I talk to about it because I play a lot of poker, and I always kind of, I used to see things when I used to not play as, oh, you could be playing poker.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then it's just about kind of figuring out how I want to schedule my days to where things make sense of what do I want to do today. Okay, I want to exercise, I want to eat healthy, I want to play poker, I want to do something, and depends on like what I want to fill out on that day is kind of how I react. Because like the way I kind of wind down from playing poker if I'm too tired is kind of like to either watch some Twitch streams of some video games I used to play or like some chess videos and kind of just do that till I fall asleep. Because like I can always find a reason to play poker until I kind of just don't want to. And I'm very good at kind of shutting that off and being like, okay, I don't want to play anymore. I'll find something else to do. But most of the time, I just want to play poker because I just love playing. And I know that that's going to effectively fade at some point. But right now, I'm still kind of in that phase of just loving the play.
yeah, yeah. I think that's great. Yeah, and I also think it's very easy for people to kind of say, oh, you should have balance, you should do this, you should do that. It
Yeah,
definitely sounds it's that's all well and good, but it depends what you want to achieve in life, and it depends
right.
what your values are and what's important to you. And clearly, being as good as you can be, at this game is quite important. Um,
Yeah.
you've any thoughts on specialization in the game? It's pretty much just no limit cash you're focusing on right now.
I think for the moment, yes. And then at some point, maybe when I want to get into PLO or some mixed games, I have the people that are around me that are good at those I can kind of talk to about improving and getting better at those kind of skills. But yeah, I guess for balance, like balance is different for everyone because like some people have to have that family, like the family life and the friendship life and the outside connection. And there's some people that like I guess like me where I just really enjoy doing what I'm doing. I
Yeah,
don't really see myself losing myself, but I just really enjoy. And when I want to go do other things, like if I want to go golfing with some friends, if I want to not play or do something with my family and like go play darts in the living room, we have a dartboard, like I'll find the time to do that.
yeah,
And I'll find the time if I want to do it. It's just about keeping myself, I guess, above all else, like kind of happy of like
yeah.
I enjoy what like I'm going to do what works for me.
Mm,
Like so for some people, it's going out, having that friendships life, doing things every day with friends, and for me, it's more of like I'm more than happy talking poker with my friends on Discord and sort of getting better at my craft.
mm,
And it's been great for me, and it's been kind of how I've come to this point so far, and definitely how I'll get to where I want to be. Is just
yeah,
sort of putting in the time and putting in the effort, and then once I sort of either find a different avenue to cross in life, I'll get there. But for
yeah,
right now, I'm sort of on the path of being as good as I can at poker because I want to be as good as I can at it. Like I love the game so much. I want to beat it because I know I have the ability to,
yeah,
and beat it in whatever it means to me, whether it means getting to high stakes or making X amount of dollars. Like that's not important to me. More as I want to play, I want to get to a certain stake, and I want to be able to beat that certain stake. And getting there is gonna give me money by default.
mm,
And it's just about putting in the time, and I enjoy Like I can easily take a break from poker to where if I'm with friends outside playing, doing whatever, I don't have that in the back of my mind like I need to go home and play poker. It's
Yeah.
more of I can enjoy that moment and then like, okay, what do I want to do after? If it's play poker, it's play poker. If it's not, it's not.
Mhm.
I've sort of finally come to the realization of I put in enough hours and I've grinded enough to where it's okay to take a break. If I want to take a couple of days off, that's okay. But I just don't. I haven't taken 2 days off of poker since I started.
Wow.
Like seriously, like I just haven't needed it. Like taking a break for me is difficult. Not
Yeah.
in the sense of I can't go away from it, but I want to keep improving. Whether it's looking at sims or watching some videos just to keep myself entertained. It's just about finding something to keep me sort of productive in the poker landscape.
Mhm.
And it's been wildly entertaining to me so far.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't entertaining, I wouldn't do it. Like I left, like I basically realized when I left school, I was like, I left school for this.
Yeah.
I left something that was, I guess, stable and secure for something I wanted to do because I knew I was going to put the work in. Because
Mhm.
if I put the same amount of work in doing like a different degree or a different skill, I'd obviously be like crushing that skill. Like I probably played about 4,000 hours in about a year and a half of just playing poker and just sitting in the seat. To where if I was doing that for school and studying or doing whatever, like it would be hard not to be successful at it. And that's
Absolutely.
just the reality of the situation. And
Yeah.
I understand that, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put in the time for poker because I want to put in the time, not because I have to. Because I could take a break for the next couple months, right? If I wanted to, like I've done well enough to be able to have that ability, but it's not something I even think about. I'm like, oh, cool, I get to play. I wake up, I get to play more poker today. I get to talk more poker with friends. I get to find something interesting in a sim I run where it's like, oh, this is interesting. I never thought about this before. And then you sort of get to play around and implement it and see how it works in game to a small extent. And then that's what kind of keeps me loving the game, is trying to find what works and what doesn't, and kind of being able to create my own strategy with the solver. And it's been great. Like
Yeah.
I've had no complaints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've said it. I've said it on this podcast several times before myself that if I was to recommend to anyone to become a professional poker player right now, if you had to give a black and white answer, the answer would be don't become a professional
Yeah.
poker player.
Yeah.
But
Don't do it unless you're insane. Like
yeah, but I also completely respect the fact that if, as you said, if you're enjoying it as much as you're enjoying it, and if you have your kind of your goals as if you're as focused on what you want to achieve as you are, by all means, go for it. And it's
yeah.
again, it comes back to what different people kind of value in life, and sometime whether it's freedom, whether it's money, whatever, that's an individual decision you have to come to. So if I was
Yeah.
giving a very kind of wide spectrum answer, it would be don't become a professional poker player. But for each individual, it's up to them to make that decision. And
Right.
definitely sounds you're in that whatever it may be, the 1% that it definitely sounds
Yeah.
like it could be a good decision for you. How tough do you think it'll be? So kind of looking forward the next, say, 3 years, whatever period you want to put in it, the journey to the high stakes. How difficult do you think it will be?
I think that, well, at least going back to like a poker player sort of set of should I be professional? I think that the way I see it is people that are going to be professionals don't ask anyone about it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? But like I'm going to be a professional poker player. It doesn't matter what you tell me, because people are like, oh, like should I be a pro? Should I? I
yeah,
heard you can make a lot of money, and it's like in
yeah.
the sense of
Yeah, just on that, I agree completely.
yeah,
I kind of dislike the term professional poker player because what is it? Anyone can
yeah.
call
If
themselves a
that's how you make
professional
money,
poker player.
right? Yeah,
So
of course.
I think it's something that, well, usually it should kind of be something that happens to you. It's like, well, I
Yeah,
don't know. I'm playing poker a lot. I'm making money at it. It doesn't really matter if I'm a quote unquote professional poker player or not. So I
like
totally agree. Yeah, this whole should I turn pro, or even the
yeah,
act of turning pro, I you know kind of have mixed feelings on that even
Yeah.
concept. So yeah, I
'Cause
totally
like,
agree with that. Yeah.
because for me, it was a feeling of like when I first, even when I was playing 20, when I was playing micros, 20L, I was still making my money from poker, but I was a quote unquote pro, but I
Mm.
didn't feel like a pro. Now I feel like a pro in the sense of I'm playing stakes, like I'm playing pretty reasonably high stakes. I have that sort of internal feeling of like, yeah, like you're being successful, you're doing well, you are professional in the sense of someone could have a different thing, a business or their job or whatever, but they also do well at poker. You could still be a professional poker player. Like you don't have to drop everything to be a pro.
Yeah. Exactly.
Where
Yeah.
it's like, to me, a pro is like, I felt there was a certain time where I was like, you know what, like I made it. And that was probably when I first started playing 200. 100, I didn't really feel it. Playing 200 and now online, and started winning and started succeeding, especially in Zoom and doing well and making a decent amount of money in a month. I was like, yeah, this feels different than when I was playing 1-2 live and winning $1,000 in a session and feeling like on top of the world.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, which kind of isn't sad, but what I don't think people really understand, is that now that I'm able to succeed and win or lose a couple $1,000 in a day if I'm playing 500, it's a very reasonable thing, especially online because it's high variance.
Mm.
Where like I used to think when I was playing micros, like once I get to high stakes and make X $1,000 a day, I'm gonna love it and it's gonna be great. But it just becomes your new normal. Of
Yeah.
like me now, like winning and losing that amount of money doesn't really impact me where I thought it was going to at the beginning, where it's like, oh, like I can't wait to win $500 in a day,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, like my life's gonna be great at that point. Where it's like you kind of just figure out as you go that you kind of get numb to that reality because once I start shot taking 1K and playing 1K and
Yeah.
winning or losing 5K in a day or like and feeling that sort of the way that works, like that's gonna be like, oh wow, like this is interesting, especially if I start running hot at least at the start, where it's like, oh, like I won, like in the sense of if I win two buy-ins, that's like me doing a month's work at the micros,
Yeah.
where it's then that could happen in 5 minutes. That could happen in back-to-back hands. You can stack someone or get stacked twice. It's happened to me before. It's gonna happen to me again. Where it's like it just doesn't. It you I felt like it was gonna be more fulfilling,
Yeah.
which proves the point of just playing poker in itself is what's going to fulfill me,
Yeah.
not the amount of money I'm going to make
Yeah.
from
The
it.
journey. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I
Like
think.
I don't make X $1,000 a day and think, wow, I made X $1,000 a day. That's great. I think to myself, like, I played poker today and I played well. Whether
Yeah.
I won or lost, like, I played well today. That's what I enjoy.
Yeah. And I think that's why that's one of the many reasons I'm such a big fan of the game. I think that philosophy is so important and so applicable to life in that in poker nothing teaches you more than poker. It's all about the process, the results,
Right.
the connection between the input and the output. When you can't control the output so much, it's all about
Right.
the input, and you just got to make sure you control the process. And that's that applies to everything in life. And I think
Yeah.
poker teaches you that it's not
Yeah.
always difficult to handle, and it is, it can be frustrating when, as you said, you're playing well but not getting the results. But again, just reminding yourself constantly of that philosophy is so important. And I think with the money side of things, yeah, it's just one of those things. The first $1,000 pot you play,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you feel
For
it.
sure.
Then the
You
second and
do.
third time, you feel it a little bit, but then kind of by the $10,000 pot,
Yeah.
just
It's
kind of,
like,
and
I've been here before.
yeah,
Like,
and I think
I've
that
been here.
just, you just change a number, whether it's 1,000, 5,000, 10,000.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's a bit of a shock to the system the first
Yeah.
time,
For
but you
sure.
just, the third, fourth, fifth time, you get used to it.
It's like it's like that euphoric feeling, especially when you win the first one.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I won one of the biggest pots. I won at 2.5, where it was like a $3,500 pot, which is decent, like 700 bigs, and had a set against a guy who probably just had an overpair or something, where I jammed turn and got called, and it just felt like I wanted to smile out of excitement, and I tried to keep that feeling, but then like as soon as I guess now, like when I was playing higher stakes, like 5-10 and 10-10, and playing in those pots, it's just sort of okay. Like I've been here before, just because the games kind of run at the same stack depth, where it's like this isn't as exciting, but it's different to say that, especially when you play a hand well and get a result you want. Like one of the biggest pots I've won was I had ace jack on ace ace 4 jack 4, and I ended up having to donk river, like making him forcing him to call with ace x instead of like allowing him to check back, because I've seen people do it where they think, oh, like you could have ace jack and then we chop, and then getting snapped off by ace x because he literally can't fold. I just felt this feeling of excitement of like, wow, like a plan came together
Yeah.
and I got to win one of the biggest pots in my career. That feeling is going to stay with me, and that's only going to change when I play higher stakes, and especially when I play like 1K or 2K, like winning that first stack is going to be like, wow, like it's going to be like the same thing when I first won a stack at like 20 now, because I remember when 20 wasn't. I remember when 20 was like impossible for me. I was like these guys are so good. I don't know how to beat 20. Same thing happened at 50. Same thing happened at 200. But now at 500, it's like looking back at it, like looking how I see myself now, and talking strategy with people playing 25-50 online, playing 2K now online. I'm like, I'm already at that point of playing 2K. I just have to put in the time and just
Yeah.
take it easy. That I'm very excited to be able to shot take 1K and sort of see the plan come together. Of like, the money's going to be a little bit more sure, but my decisions are still going to be the same, because
Yeah.
I see it as numbers and pot size percentages versus just how much money's in the middle. And I'm excited to kind of see what happens. It's
Yeah.
it's definitely going to be something I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah. I suppose, yeah. Wildest dream. Do you think about it much? The kind of the path you're on, or is it just kind of one day at a time?
Like, I see myself now, like putting in the work to get to where I want. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if I go on a swing at 500, go on a swing at 1K or 2K or whatever. Like every time I play poker and I end the session for the day, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come back tomorrow. Like
Yeah.
I'll be back. It doesn't just end. Not in the sense of it's all one long session kind of cliche thing, but like I'm
No.
going to play again tomorrow. Like I'm gonna play again tomorrow. Like it's that simple. Like what I want to do, I'm gonna play some more. And it's just a feeling of like it's never over, but I don't want it to be over. Like I don't want it to end, because I've I can only I can't attest to what it feels like yet. If I get to where I want to get to, and I'm like, oh, like that's it, right? Because like at some point, you only certain stakes run, and you have to just wait for lobbies.
Yeah.
At some point, that reality is going to have to hit me, especially if I put in the time like I do. So right now, it's just kind of enjoying that there's always more. Like there's always more until there's not. And then
Mm.
when there's not, then I'm going to have to sort of pivot and find something else I want to do. Or like I'll be able to do what I want. Like if I want to go back and play 500 to still get volume in, or I want to play 1K to get volume in, I can do that. I've proven my skill set at that stake before. It's just a matter of how much I want to play. Because like some people, when they get to the high stakes, just sort of like bum hunt and wait for the lobbies to run, wait for the good games and make the win rate. And that's a very winning strategy in poker. Like just waiting for the best games and playing and getting the best seats versus the recreationals. Like that's where you're going to win most of your money anyways. Like the reg battling is just so like the variance goes down in the sense of you're not losing so much from a certain guy.
Mm.
But I'd rather play against 5 recs versus 5 super pros, which is something I never thought about before, just because it's just a matter of I'm not able to effectively say what I want until I get there. Like I can't say how I want high stakes to be at 50, 100 until I prove that I can make it to 50, 100. Like, what
Mm.
I say about it doesn't really matter until I prove it. Basically, it's like, okay, like this is what you want, prove it. Get to 50, 100, then talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the drive I have. Is just sort of play some more, get to high stakes, and then have that ability to sort of talk about it.
Mm.
It's,
Yeah, I think yeah, an excellent approach. Thank you for joining me today, Landon. If
yeah,
people,
for sure.
yeah, enjoyed it. If people want to find out more about you, your Twitter, you have a blog, Twitch. What's the best way for people to find out more
Yeah,
about you?
mostly Twitter. On Twitter, I post everything. I love Twitter. Twitter's great. At Landon Tice, just first name, last name. and I stream a bunch, so you'll probably see me on there. And then that's about it. Yeah, mostly just Twitter, and I'm on there all the time. I probably have it up when I'm playing, to be honest. It's a little leak I have. I kind of have to accept it at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I'll put a link in the description below. Thank you to
Perfect.
everyone else for joining us as well. Let me know if you're enjoying the content. We're around 10 podcasts in now, so if you want to see more, the best thing you can do is subscribe to the YouTube channel and tell people that you think might enjoy the content. The podcasts are also now available on Spotify if you want to listen in the background without having YouTube open. Easiest way to find us there is by searching Jamie Flynn. You can also use the podcast player on the website, www.thelockdown.life. Our next podcast, we'll be having the founder of the EPT and president of Party Poker Live, John Duffy, on. So make sure to check that out. Landon, thank you very much. Keep doing what you're doing, and best of luck in your journey.
Thank you so much for having me. I will.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll keep you posted.